Okay, guys, I am very excited to welcome our next guest to Let's Get Freaky. We are heading down under tonight, guys. We have got George with us. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, Tommy. It's a lovely time to chat. A lot better than 5 a.m. when I normally talk to England.
So what's the time where you are right now?
8:17 a.m.
Wow, it's just about to go 20 past 11 here at night. That's
Yeah,
mad.
that's not past your bedtime.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you know what? This is quite an early one for me as well, to be honest, because I'm normally interviewing America at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So this is quite a
Yeah.
nice time. This is quite early for me.
Oh, that's good.
So how are you? All good?
I'm excellent. Fighting fit for an old fella.
Yeah, man, looking good for sure. And for the
Hey,
for the listeners
boys.
that can't see, you have got a really cool setup. You are in your own library, which is absolutely awesome.
There's 9-foot bookcases, floor to ceiling, all around me.
Yeah, man.
Lovely. Like when I try and find something, there's a good chance I will. Even if I do manage to. I mean, it just continues going on and on and on and on and on. And it
That's
goes
a
on the other side.
lot of books.
Yeah, it used to be bigger. We moved to a villa. I had a 2-story library then.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
How
So
many of
this
those books are yours? You've got a lot of books yourself, haven't you, sir?
middle grade bookcase. You've got a series of red books, the shelves above it, and the shelf below it. Most of the shelf there. The series of red books, a series of books I wrote earlier this year, 7,000 pages, 22 volumes, on
Wow.
the history of phenomena from 1600 to 1999 in chronological order.
Wow, man.
It took me a few months.
That's a lot of pages.
Yeah, I was thinking not many people get to write an encyclopedia in their lifetime. And then I thought, hang on, not many people get to write a book in a lifetime. And I've
Yeah.
already published, I think it's over 110, but I'm not sure. I'm working on another 50 at the moment.
Wow. That is impressive,
I
man.
thought I'd give every state in the North America its own little booklet. Some will be booklets of 10 or 20 pages. Others are several hundred pages. They're all going to get their own Bigfoot book.
Yeah, that's awesome,
Because
man.
people are parochial. They want to know what's happening in their village, what's happening in their town. And Bigfoot's a big subject.
Yeah, man,
Mind
for
you,
sure.
I've got a lot of subjects. I've got books on cosmology, meteor impacts, my version of the death of the dinosaurs, where it wasn't one piddly little 450, what was it? 460-kilometer wide crater, Shishulum, in Yucatan. And everyone disregards the 450-kilometer wide Cuba crater next to it from the same period, and the Shiva crater in the Indian Ocean, which is even bigger. They form a teardrop as they land. I devised the term teardrop, years ago, where you see the first impact, which is large, the secondary impacts are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Poor little Shishulum is one of the small ones. The others are monsters as they graduate down.
Yeah.
But I'm not an accredited scientist. I just do research based on data, and I discover patterns no one else ever sees. It's one advantage of 205 IQ. Mind you, it's useless. I still can't open screen doors. That's the way I am.
Man, it's super interesting. It's fascinating stuff. How did you first start getting into these subjects and collecting this data?
Oh, it's an old story. I was born in 1955 in a little remote village in New South Wales in Australia called North Wagga. It was across the river and on the river flats across from a bigger village or city called Wagga Wagga, which means place of many crows, or in one version, place of many stumbling and falling drunks. It suited both. Didn't see that many crows, but I did see a lot of stumbling and falling drunks. And we lived in an old weatherboard homestead for big veranda on the front and the rest of it. It's almost southern North America. But it was a good little property. We raised pigs to English, or swine, depending on whether you like them or not. I don't mind them on a plate in front of me. And I'd had a severe, I'd been run over by a Volkswagen when I was 1 1/4 and was crippled and supposed to be a vegetable and supposed to be relatively non-mobile. So my parents bought me the Encyclopedia Britannica when I was about 4 to have something to do and something to read, which I read. Then I found out that the high dam of Aswan was going to be built in Egypt. And I'm not sure how much of your knowledge encompasses a high dam, the Aswan High Dam. I was horrified. I don't know whether it triggered something from a past life or what. My family said I just sat wailing and donging at the piano about Abyss Simbel being flooded. It's a strange thing for a kid who's about 7 or 8. That my love for Egyptology was such that that was horrible. When I found out they were actually going to move it, that's when High Dam was finished in '68. That was so wonderful, and to move it so that at the solstice, winter solstice and summer solstices, the sunlight still goes straight to the shrine and the statue at the end of it in the new position. They duplicated it so well. So, okay, maybe I was a little weird. And then I started finding books. My parents, any book I wanted, I got, because I was just basically reading, not doing much else. And I came across the Philadelphia Experiment by Morris K. Jessup, the original version of it. I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is a ship being teleported in the Second World War from Philadelphia to elsewhere and back, people dying, extreme use of very strange forces we didn't understand. And was it true or was it not? And I don't like mysteries. I've never liked mysteries. I like answers, even if sometimes we have to adjust our scientific viewpoint, because that's how science is meant to evolve. Science is not fixed. Science is one hypothesis waiting around to be wiped out by the next hypothesis. So technically, nothing is real. It's all hypothesis defeating prior hypothesis, but that's another series of lectures. And Jessup's book just got my mind thinking, what is there in the rest of it? So I started buying books by Charoux, Colosimo, Harold Wilkins, Desmond Leslie, a whole mixture. Leslie was UFOs and their relationship to demonology, which is an interesting thing, where all the fairyland tales of centuries are the same as the modern UFO encounters today. Only the creatures have changed a little. They change relative to your cultural loading. And that kept having an impact on me. And Wilkins and Cosimo and Charoux and others were writing about the archaeology that no one wanted to talk about, that went against the constant paradigm that this is not accepted archaeology, we're not going to use it. And I thought, no, this is all forming patterns. This is amazing. And so I just kept buying books and reading and writing. And I thought, no, there's something happening here. I'm reading more and more books on ufology and monsters and Bigfoot and any mysteries, any phenomena. I had to buy the book, which I did, if I could get hold of it. And we didn't have the internet then. So you can't just buy 8,000 books from Amazon and have them shipped over in 2 weeks. Thank you, Amazon. I love you. Because without Amazon, none of my books would be published. Yeah. I'd still be working on one gigantic book at home, wondering what I'll ever do with it. Now, 110 plus, and they sell quite well. People like reading them. I get good comments on them. Sometimes I don't. Oh, well, that's life. Shit happens. And also, you can't be responsible for what some idiot's thinking or saying.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, I thought, okay, there's a mystery going on here that I started picking up during everything. All this reading about UFOs and monsters and the Virgin Mary. And I tried to talk about it with the other kids at school. You can imagine this little country school in Australia in the 1950s. Holy Mother of God. They just wanted to play footy and wrestle. They didn't want to talk about Egyptian archaeology. They didn't want to talk about dinosaurs. They didn't want to talk about anything interesting. So I was one of those kids you'd see in the back corner of the library. I think that library had 20 books in it. I'm not sure, but I was there. And I thought, hang on, something odd here. I'm reading books on this particular area, on this side of this mountain or whatever. These people are seeing the Virgin Mary in blue. Must be a Marian Virgin Mary. She's standing in a tree or a cave. And I thought, okay, yeah, okay. There seem to be trees or caves every time you see a Marian Virgin Mary. Okay, fine. Then I started noticing. So I like maps. I like spatial recognition, seeing where things are, what patterns evolve. Hang on, that's that same spot for Virgin Mary, but it's around just a little bit away from it on the other side of the mountain. And it's all these people who have a continuous history for a period are seeing Orthon from Venus, the great Venusian with the long blonde hair and he's 6'6", and he's come to Earth. You know, comes out, it's almost, you could hear angels singing. Maybe he was an angel. And they're seeing him here and getting the great message of, I have a prophecy for the world, and in 1968, 72, 74, whatever, it will end and blah, that'll be the end of it. Greetings from the Galactic Federation or whatever. But, that's just a coincidence. I don't like coincidences either. And I'm amassing more data in my head. I think, hang on, this is the same area again, just a little bit away from it. This is in North America. And they're seeing Bigfoot. What? Okay, Bigfoot is believed to normally live in North America, though we know that there are large, hairy simians or anthropoid apes living on every continent, as far as we know, apart from Antarctica, and who knows? Who knows what lurks under the ground there? And that's another story I'm not even going into at the moment. So I thought, that's just an odd coincidence. Why are the three of them in the same area? Now I noticed other clusters, but at different times. But this is odd. This is odd. So I found some old printers block type boxes. They're just long, flat boxes with long columns to hold block type for printing. I think I found them on a garbage pile somewhere or at the tip. Because tips are lovely for foraging through, or you could in the old days before they started bulldozing everything. And so I thought, okay, let's do it this way. If a thing comes from somewhere starting with A, I'll put it in the first one, which is A. Then you can guess, we ended up with them up to Z, or Z, depending on who's listening. And so I just cut these strips out as I'm reading every book, wrote down the note of what occurred there, and the place, and the date. And in it went. And that kept me happy for years. And then I started going through them, and I thought, hang on, I got lots of ones for this one, for the same area, and lots of ones for that one. And they just gave me more details for each thing, because every writer writes with their own slant, their own definition. And so you can get 3 different reports on the same thing and all different, which is rather amazing. So I thought, this is getting weirder and weirder. So I started writing them all down, and it became a book that I finished in roughly 1994, but kept editing. It's finally published in 2012 as an ebook because it was 1,700 pages. Couldn't be published as a normal. It's Gateways to the Gods. It is available now in 4 volumes, because that's what it took to publish 1,700 pages. But it had latitudes and longitudes and mathematical calculations. You could open any part of it and you would have what the sighting was, where the sighting was, the latitude and longitude of the sighting, the date of the sighting, the time of the sighting. Anytime you open one single little snippet of information. Of course, hideous thing to edit, because every time you added a new thing, you had to change the number structure of everything.
Wow.
So you could keep up to date with it. I thought, this is getting ridiculous. No computer then, just purely by hand. I had tried using a computer, but it just couldn't quite grasp it. So anyway, I'm looking at these this patterns it's forming, and I thought, let's try and put these on paper. Let's try and put these on paper. And the viewers may not have seen anything like this. Let's just see what happens when we convert Earth's surface into a vertical plane. We get scribble like that.
Wow. So
The
that
thing is, all anomalous phenomena from 1800 to 1977. The large bit here is the United States. It's from 120 to 30. So it's 120, 0, 0. There are always two zeros. I developed that constant because you have to have two zeros, 0 east, 0 west. And I thought, hang on, what's this doing? It's creating sine waves. That's ridiculous. All this data is supposed to be schizophrenia, imagination, delusion, delirium tremens, every explanation except for what the hell are these goddamn things doing, creating repetitive sine waves through time, because this is time. I developed a way of mapping the Earth in time.
wow.
Everyone had bothered to do it as a circle. Bugger that for a joke, you can work it out if you tried. The 5- and 6-dimensional mathematics are phenomenal. No, we just converted to a flat surface, east-west, straight down. Put the data in, and there we have
Wow.
lots of sine waves. So anyway, this did not fill me with joy. It filled me with a hell of a lot of frustration. I thought, this has to be tested. We have to be scientific. We have to be logical. As I said, there's a scientific and logical reason and explanation for everything, even if we had to modify the explanation. Excuse me for a second, I'm getting dry. So at the time, it was 1992, I think, I got in touch with a TV show called Beyond 2000, The World of Tomorrow. Ah, great. They weren't interested, but one of their researchers was. She said, well, we can't really film anything about it. You're not a scientist, so we can't really tell anyone about it. And I met that years later as well with some of my other books. And they sent me to a Pasteur Prize-winning physicist in Australia. They said, talk about it with him. See what he thinks. And he's a very radical physicist, but a brilliant physicist. And so I met the fellow in Wollongong, 92, went down after I met him almost every night for about 6 weeks to download data onto his ancient CP/M free computer system. It's probably older than you are. That was in 94, and that still had a CP/M free green screen.
Wow.
It was an advanced computer for its day, but I think my watch is more intelligent now. And he did a whole lot of graphs. He worked out how to do certain things with it. What he did was, we did 1800, 1977, which is a test period I'd set. Every single phenomenal report that had been multiply independent witnessed or left trace evident phenomena was in it. Nothing like, oh, I saw a light in the sky and I went over. No. I wanted, here I are, and I want to take you away, or whoop, whatever. Or, it's come out of the bush or a lock, or wherever. with several witnesses or several independent witnesses. Okay, thousands of them. We had this weird graph that kept going up and up and up and up and up and up from 1800 to 1977. So that's when I stopped my database. So I thought, one day I'm going to have to do the database from 1977 onwards to validate this database. Because if it's got the same patterning, it validates this one. But what happened was he reversed all the data, so it became an exponentially. So you had smaller bumps, but they were more indicative of what was happening over time. And I thought, one night he's talking to me. This is weird. This data of yours is all supposed to be garbage. It's just dross. This is the first pattern to come out of it. If you can see that at all.
Yeah.
It's a 515-year period of repetition.
Wow.
Okay. And this is, where are we? I really should have put these in. And then we had a Neptune one as well. Where the hell did Neptune go? Oh, Neptune's gone missing. And then there was one that wasn't as long. I think it was 120, 130-year period. And then we had a Neptune period. We're calling these planetary periods for one thing, and I can't remember what it was running at. 112.5 years was Neptune. And then we have Uranus. And we're over here. I had a bad problem a few years ago. I got the shits with all this research and burnt it. And this is all that was left.
You burnt it?
I burnt it.
Oh, wow.
And you've been working on something for years and years and years, and you can't get any further with it.
Yeah. Just got frustrated.
And then we get down to a Saturn cycle, which was only about 75 years. It's all written down in my books. And
wow.
We got down to a Jupiter cycle of about 60 years. We thought, well, we didn't call them those things at first. He said, we've just got these weird cycles. Then he said, you realize that they're very similar to the periodicities of the planets in our solar system. He said, that's why this one's similar to Pluto, this one's similar to Uranus, this one's similar to Neptune, to Saturn, to Jupiter. Under that, the computer couldn't sort out the static. There's too much. And of course, we're talking 1992. So he said, if these are similar to the periodicities of these planets that we know of, and the planetoid, what is the 515-year one? We would have to deduce then that that is another planet or planetoid. So we called it Persephone at 515 astronomical units from the Earth. Who knows, there might be people who call it Nibiru. There's a lot of that going around at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, it just happens to be sitting out there in the Oort cloud at the edge of the solar system, doing its own thing. But once again, why is all this data that is totally erroneous, as we used to call it, forming patterns, and now forming patterns relative to the periodicities of the major planets? And remember, all a planet or a star is a magneto. For those who don't know what a magneto is, I'll give you a simple example. You put copper inside something and you start turning it inside an iron core, you put the copper on the outside, an iron sheath on the inside, and you have a battery or a power source in constant movement. So let's just thinking, we got these little electromagnetic batteries buzzing all over the place, in some cases very big electromagnetic sources. Are they influencing the observers to see things? Except these things, in my reports, leave footprints. They leave burnt buildings. They leave wrecked cars. They leave damage. They kill people. So, okay, and probe. So we're going, what's happening here? What sort of reality is this? And people say, it might be another dimension opening. Such an easy answer. When I get to dimension opening, why didn't we think of that before? Of course, we thought of that before. But I don't want to know. Yeah, it's a dimension opening. I want to know why and how. The ins and outs of a cat's bum, to use an old phrase. Sorry, I have to get moving the mouse or we lose the picture.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Now, so we've determined that there is a pattern to these damn things. It's related to the periodicities of the major planets of the universe. I call it what do I call it? The Mitrovic effect, the Mitrovic phenomenon, which had various names over the years. It's quite controversial because what causes an energy mass to occur that you can't see, you can't feel? That goes to, I'll just quickly go through another little scenario. On Earth, we've got 5 states of matter. Hang on, here we go again. No, I learned there are 3 states of matter, you say. I was at school. I did the level 4s. Yes, solids, electrons, and well, they're barely doing anything. They're basically just bloody sitting there. Liquids, yeah, the little buggers are getting agitated. Gas, oh, they're off. They're racing. They're going everywhere. Plasma, only discovered since the 70s, basically. It's at the core of a nuclear explosion. Those little buggers are now everywhere. They've reached the point where the electromagnetic bond of their core is disintegrating. The electromagnetic bond is being destroyed. And then, for quite a few years, I thought maybe we'd go to a quasar vacuum, which was a quantum physics term, where everything vibrates so fast, it goes through the nuclear explosion, turns into a plasma, and goes into another dimension. So we got Schrodinger's cat in 2 parts, there and here, and possibly not here or there either. But it's only recently I've had to reconceptualize it. It's a far simpler thing. The problem with the quasar vacuum is the incredible heat. It would destroy the observer. With no observer, there's no observation. So something that had been lurking in the back of my mind for many years and years and years since I was a kid. It's a harmonic rhythm or vibration. That's the 5th state of matter, where there's actually no matter but a vibration. That these are harmonics, which all sine waves are. Everything in the universe is a harmonic.
Yeah.
Everything we are is a harmonic. And that's what I've been working on for a few years. Sorting out these harmonics and everything to do with it. Along with writing more books on Bigfoot than anyone else, more books on UFOs than anyone else, lots of books on archaeology, and books on the history of Earth's cataclysmic history. That's an interesting one too. From the beginning of Earth to the present. It's 700 pages. It makes a nice doorstop. It's called When the Sky Crashed Down. And a little discovery I made during it, the second oldest meteoric impact on Earth was in 3,600, 32 or 3. Anyway, 32, yeah, 3 3,260,000,000 years ago at a place called Barberton in South Africa on the Greenbelt. Bang, 60 miles wide. That would change the neighbourhood completely. And I was looking at other things to lighten up the tales, to give them more visual and intellectual stimulus, because you don't want to just read in 3,260,000,000 BC, a meteorite hit Barberton and left an impact crater of 60 miles. Next. But no. It'd be the most mind-numbingly boring book on earth. Mind you, I did have a person say that about my books, that they spent hours reading them. They were so boring. And I said, why did you read them?
Yeah. They can't have been that boring if you read the whole book. No.
Yeah. Okay, tell me about it. But you know what was interesting about Barberton? Now, this is a period there is no life on Earth. There is no oxygen on Earth. There are no aerobic bacteria. There's nothing. And this is the second largest major eruption, meteoric impact. I only did impact over a kilometre in size. So they're all big ones. The oldest fossilized anaerobic bacteria, and I've got their name written in the book somewhere, but I can't remember it, were found at Barberton. And the amazing thing is they were found from the same date, 3,260,000,000 years ago. Now, the beautiful thing about a comet, I like comets, is they're big mud balls, basically. Mud and ice. The outside makes a lovely shield from electromagnetic radiation and solar radiation. And inside, the temperature is lovely for a bacterium. And it's got moisture as well. What more would a bacterium want? We've seen them around hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. They don't give a rat's ass about 500, 600 degrees Celsius. Yeah, nice day in the sauna, Fred. Yeah, great. Could turn it up a bit. I wanted to announce this to the world that I'd found pretty well where life first arrived on Earth. None of this, it just happened to appear one day during an electrical storm, which was the accepted theory. Oh, okay. That's a pretty good accepted theory. I'd rather stick to it arrived from elsewhere and landed here.
Yeah.
The principle of panspermia. So I contacted a prominent ABC television show that deals with science, the Government Broadcasting Network of Australia. And I discussed it with them. They said, it's fascinating, but we can't interview you. I said, why? And they said, you're not an accredited scientist. You haven't had it peer reviewed. I said, most of the major scientific discoveries were made by non-accredited scientists. Some discoveries were made by a person who worked for the telegram office in Vienna in the early 20th century. Excuse me? No, it's the way we do things here. And I basically said, F you, and that was it.
Wow, man.
In the entire time, I get interviewed from England, the States, Canada, Europe, quite often. It's almost a fortnightly, monthly thing. Do you know how many times I've been interviewed by anyone in Australia?
How many?
I'd like to say none. But 2 weeks ago, I got interviewed by our residential community TV station.
2 weeks ago?
Here in our gated community. Yes.
Wow.
We've got our own TV channel. So I finally got interviewed in Australia for 5 minutes.
Wow, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, the rest of the has been near me.
That's crazy, man.
I carry that badge with pride these days.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's crazy. I can't understand
I've
why
written
they
more
wouldn't.
books. I've written more books than any Australian author, and published them, and researched them, and edited them.
Wow.
So figure that one out.
So why
Could someone say it's the
why
conspiracy?
yeah, I mean it sounds like it, man. Why won't they talk to you? Because your work is incredible.
I'm a rat bag.
It's crazy.
I take on subjects no one else wants to touch. I look for patterns and find them, excuse me, in events and things that aren't supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Like I wrote a little book recently called Shishalub is Not Alone. I had to change its name because no one would ever understand what Shishalub was. Shishalub was the meteor that apparently killed the dinosaurs. I had to change the name to the comets and meteorites that killed the dinosaurs. As I said earlier, there were several of them.
It wasn't just a one-time event.
There were several of them around the same time, creating nuclear winter conditions. I mean, it wasn't one 65-kilometre wide impact or a 450 wide one near it around the same time. The beauty of geology is you look at geological error factors. That can be up to 500 million years. Excuse me? That's an error factor. So what I did the average of the error factors. And then suddenly you start having things occurring around the same time. So that when you put them on graphs or on maps, I got maps in all of my books on cosmology and impact. So you can see where they were and how wide they were and their relationship to other areas. It has to be visual. You've got to have, it's a lot of stuff to comprehend, but we can do it visually. And now, just as I've lost myself, which I have, where was I? Okay. Where were we? When you look at things on a map after working out the mean average of the error factors, say 500 million years, you form patterns. And I started finding patterns where meteorite impacts were occurring in lines. They started occurring in what I call teardrops, a big impact, then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and more fragmented. Because what's happened is we had a big one hit here, and it's shattered, and its bits are falling here as the Earth is turning into it. It changes the entire look of things completely. Because using that, we can look at 12,000 years ago around the Younger Dryas, which I've written books on. I've written books on what I call the Great Cataclysm. And Graham Hancock, I love his documentary. It's lovely pickings. It's really nice. And his wife's lovely. She's a Facebook friend of mine. Stated that one comet was responsible for the Younger Dryas impact events and the resultant extinction of the North American woolly mammoth and Siberian mammoths and everybody else. By using maps and using lots of different sources, I found there were whole meteor storms occurring. Literally.
Wow.
But Bermuda was a central uplift of a 1,500K impact crater. A central uplift. Every now and again, you'll see an ad for milk. They drop something into the milk and it comes up in slow motion and then goes down again. Imagine that's a meteor hitting the Earth and piercing the crust. That solidifies before it comes down. That's a central uplift.
Yeah.
It's like a batholith volcanism. It's sort of like, it is a batholith really, but it's not a volcanic batholith. It's a meteoric or cometary caused batholith. So, oh damn it, it's not there. I moved all my books around, so I can't just grab the particular book I was after. But there's this big impact at Bermuda here. And then we had smaller ones occurring. And there's a lovely one on Hudson's Bay. If you look at the right side of Hudson's Bay, It's a lovely circle. It was a meteoric impact. We'll come back to that in a second. And then they got smaller and smaller as we went over Alaska. And then by the time remember, we're on a sphere, by the time we'd hit Russia, there's a whole stream of fragments that form lakes. That's a teardrop. Bang, and then shatter, 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 and around. The interesting part about it, though, is that this multiple meteoric impact, or cometary impact, the one that shattered Hudson Bay, we weren't talking about, people get the idea that the North and South Pole have always been there. They don't go anywhere. They are correct in part. The weather has always been there. But what's underneath it moves. At the time of the Younger Dryas, Hudson Bay was the North Pole. And it was the centre of the North American ice mass. So the ice mass was actually the Arctic ice mass. Because what happened in that period is that, bang, we have the Earth tilting, 26.5 degrees, the North Pole moves, and geomagnetics proves this in the study of the polar positions. It moved from Hudson Bay to Greenland, 26.5 degrees. A shift upwards on the Siberian side, which meant all the mammoths and mastodons and everybody else wandering around that required half a ton of food per day, not ice or snow, that ate leaves off trees because that's what we found in their bellies, in the frozen mammoths, were snap frozen as their land surface went bang, straight into Arctic.
Wow.
Yeah, bird-sized mammoth. Meanwhile, the impact at Hudson Bay has pierced the 2-mile thick ice mass, and it is moving. It's going to cause tidal waves pretty soon that are enormous. It's responsible, as it rapidly melts, for the 300 to 400 foot sea rise at the same period. There were too many things occurring at the same time. And another facet of it was all around. It's a shame you can't insert pictures from Google onto here. If people have tried it, sometimes it gets confusing. You have, with Hudson Bay as the nucleus, in Wyoming, and then on the eastern seaboard, all along the southern states, you have what are called the bays on land. They're elliptical lakes going from roughly north to south based on Hudson Bay from that direction. The beauty of them is the southern lips are high. The northern lips are almost non-existent. Oh, climatologists and geologists state these are caused by the wind. Okay. What if they're caused by fragments of the continental ice mass being hurled so far out they are crashing to the Earth? And they're not crashing straight down. Those things don't crash straight down. They crash at an angle. That's why there's nothing found in them, because it was ice. But they've ploughed these lakes, because if you look at them on Google Earth, and you look at them at pictures of the Carolina bays, the Georgia bays, they even intersect with each other. They overlap, going in the same direction. We got a lot of skidding going on in this period. Patterns of recognition. How are we going? Are you fine now?
Yeah, this is cool, man. This is awesome.
So that's what happened in the last cataclysm, which nobody talks about. We don't talk about last cataclysm. It's not scientifically verified. Not scientifically verified. All of this stuff is scientifically verified. I've been the industrial Hoover that's covered them all up.
Yeah.
And worked out the patterning because I like patterning. Yeah. I'm not sure whether I've got Asperger's or not, but I like patterning.
That's amazing, man. Why do you think mainstream science doesn't want to change its findings and doesn't want to look into new options and new opinions?
Protect its ass. You see, I'm a professor at a respected university on Earth. I've got the top job in my department, and I did my papers on a Marian fish bone from the western side of the island and how different it was to the one on the right-hand side of the island. If all of you want to continue in your careers, you will follow what I say. It's called a hegemonic oligarchy, and it exists in every bureaucracy you can find, especially academic ones. So what happens is everyone starts bum sniffing from the bottom down to head up to keep their tenure so they can publish, so they can be there. And you know, one of the best examples of it I've ever known, there's a brilliant anthropologist. I'm pretty sure he's dead now. Mr. Leakey, Leakey. He excavated Olduvai Gorge for years. He virtually fathered paleontology in Africa. He found Lucy, a pithecanthropine creature. He found other hominids from God knows when, from millions of years ago in Olduvai Gorge. It's probably the most famous fossil hominid area in the world. He wrote the textbooks on it. And everyone said, yay! I think it's Tim. I can't remember. There's so much stuck in here and it's so hard to retrieve at times. Yeah, the old forgettery. And okay, he has books. I got quite a few of his books. I love his books on paleontology. They're easy to read. His sons are brilliant writers. His wife was a brilliant writer and archaeologist, paleontologist. He went to North America. He went to Texas and California. He found what he believed to be tiny marsupial tiny bone flakes, eolithic flakes, of little spear points and things like that. And he found other things that looked like Mesolithic and Eolithic stones carved by man or a hominid related to us. In Africa, great discovery, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. In North America, heresy, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. Man came here in 18,000 BC. That was it. Went across the Bering Strait, which was covered with 2 miles of ice. Managed to survive for months as they headed south and ended up in the southern United States. My question usually is like the mammoths is, what did they eat? Sorry, we don't answer that question. It's a simple question. You don't eat, you die.
Yeah.
So he became an outcast. And coming back, yes, 18,000 is an amazing date. It's shortly before the dry ice period, but it's not very long ago. And somebody's writing about it recently on Facebook, and I put in a little point. God, did it get them going. I said, you've all forgotten, obviously, about the research done at Atlico in Puebla State, south of Mexico City in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, where Paleolithic spear points were found inside mammoths, inside their bones. By the way, if you stab bone, it has to be fresh or it doesn't go in. So these were live mammoths. Yeah, no worries. And the dating of 250,000 years ago. I'm sorry, I can't hear any of you. Excuse me? Where are you? And the thing is, it's not the only one. There are lots and lots. I just did a podcast yesterday, a little podcast. I only do them for an hour. I don't charge for them. You can donate if you want to. But I pick a subject, so I did traveling down the east coast of North America, the section, what did I do yesterday? New Jersey to Georgia. The thing is, it's not just a trip of river voyage. It's from my book, Pre-Columbian River Explorers of North America. And it's full of Romans and Celts and Jews and North Africans and Iberians or Spanish and Portuguese and Basques and Bristol fishermen, all in North America. Fishing, trading, Minoans heading off from Crete to North America to get copper. But it's another little story. We'll stick to this one first. And I wish I could remember the theme I was going through again. But you've got all these things happening in North America. This book is based on river voyages along the North American coast. You go down, little sites on the coast, then we head up. And it took a while to research it because I found that all these rivers and creeks and tributaries, they kept bringing forth Roman coins, Celtic runic writing, strange statues, weird artifacts. And this is only a 1 hour one, and that was only the bit from New Jersey to Georgia,
Wow.
which I published yesterday. I've got a full book of them, all in state by state. No, hang on, no. Strange archaeology of North America's in state county by county format. That one, I couldn't do it that way, so it's by river format. The trouble when you write so many books, you forget their formats at times. Sometimes I forget their names. Because the thing with water is it's easy to travel on. You can carry a lot of freight on a boat or a raft. Can't carry much on a donkey or a camel. Well, you need a lot of camels. The seas, the rivers and lakes, especially during the pluvial period, such as the medieval period and the Roman period, every 1,000 years we have a pluvial period, which means a rainy period. Lots of rain, everything's lush and wonderful. And incidentally, I know we jump all over the place, but that's the nature of my interviews.
That's cool, man. You've got so much knowledge up there. It's unbelievable.
Why did the Vikings call Greenland Greenland when they called Iceland Iceland? We're not really discussing the most imaginative observers. Simple reason being, because in between the 10th to the 13th century, Greenland was green. Because we're in a period of global warming, 1,000-year cycle. And people hiss at me when I bring that one up as well. I'm just going for another one now. Greenland was so green, at its capital, which was called Gardar, Tolkien borrowed Greenlandic names for his books. Gardar was the capital of Greenland, the Viking country of Greenland. It was big enough to have a stone-built cathedral. You can Google it. The remains of it are still there. Because Greenland was abandoned about the 14th century. Gone. They could survive in Iceland, but no longer in Greenland. The Cathedral of Garda had 300 cattle buyers or stalls next to it. 300. It's a lot of cattle. Cattle do not live on snow. They need fodder. When it's warm, they can eat grass, but that grass also has to be of enough quantity to provide for the winter. So we're talking about a lush climate, a lush, wet, cold climate, probably like New Zealand. So here we have a warm period we don't want because it destroys the bloody modern ideology and political manipulation that occurs every 1,000 years. And we got cows in Greenland. And you know what they were? They were dairy cows. They're good boys, the Vikings. They drank their milk.
Yeah.
Dairy cattle need a lot of food. Otherwise, you can't have cattle stalls for 300 of them at Garda. And it's so handy. Those just point to North America. I think it's 150 miles, which for a Viking ship is a day trip. You got the entire coast. And so the book of pre-Columbian river explorers does have them in, landing at lots of different places all along the east coast of North America, going through the Great Lakes and into the huge lakes that used to exist in Minnesota and areas like that, because it's so convenient. And it's weird that 1,000 years later, those areas are mainly settled by Scandinavian farmers.
Yeah, yeah,
They almost ended up in their same space again. It's like you look at the Spanish expeditions, they always end up in countries that look like Spain.
yeah, yeah,
Look at Mexico, it looks like Spain. Don't know what happened with the Pommies, or as we call them here, who came to Australia. We don't look like England. Tried to make it look like England, but no, it didn't really work. So I believe in overviews. Problem in modern society is microcosmic single views and micro views. So they can see and study and analyze a hair on an ant's bum at 200 yards. But they forget that there's something about to step on it. Once you get the overview, you realize there's an elephant standing next to it.
yeah,
You start seeing all these different patterns that are rolling into each other. And we come back again to the graph.
yeah. Incredible stuff.
So that's what I was doing.
George, I think you've got to be probably the cleverest person I've ever met. Like, it's amazing, man.
I'm just a nerd.
No, you're not a nerd at all. It's amazing. So so the history that we're told, that the scientists tell us, or what's in the history books, do you think that's just all pretty much wrong?
Well, look at the word itself, his story. His story.
Yeah,
Gender-specific interpretations of previous events,
yeah,
if you want to go back to basics. Because all the winners create the history. All the losers, like the Aztecs and their fabled codices, of which we've got 9. No, the Mayan codices, we have 9. Aztec, we've got a handful. And yet, the Aztec or Nahua or culture had more advanced cities than the Spaniards when they arrived. They had plumbing, they had floating gardens, they had libraries, they had zoos, they had everything. Okay, they had a religion that was a little different. Like a lot of the Mesoamerican cultures, they believed in human sacrifice, but to them it was their norm. And what killed them was not 64 Spaniards or 56, depending on who you read. It was 54 or 66 Spaniards and 20,000 opposing Indian groups. It was the viruses that came over from Europe that wiped out almost all of the population. The same thing happened in Central and South America. The diseases came with them. But to all the mythology, 56 people on their horses come into Mexico City, knock Montezuma off the perch and take over. Unfortunately, they destroyed one of the great cities of the world. But even the Spanish conquistadors said it was the most wonderful city they'd ever seen. It was clean, it was big, it was well drained, it was everything that Spain wasn't. But they wanted the gold and they wanted the power. That's another story.
Fascinating stuff, man.
Interesting though.
It is.
So the dedication of the temple of Huitzilopochtli, I think only just before the conquistadors arrived, 15,000 people were sacrificed by having their hearts ripped out and their bodies thrown down the steps. It was part of a continuing 56-year cycle that both they and the Aztecs did. The same period as the perihelion of Venus, relative to Earth and the Sun, because they believed that every 56 years, Venus would come back and wipe out the Earth. They extinguished every fire in the kingdom and waited overnight to make sure Venus wasn't coming back, and
Wow.
they relit the fires over the bodies. Cycles again.
Yeah, yeah,
All cycles.
yeah. Everything seems to be connected. Everything. Like,
Everything is, it's a theory of everything.
it's amazing.
Yeah, the Mitrovic principle, that's what I'm calling it now.
Yeah, that's it. No, it's cool, man.
I
So
didn't mention it for many years, and then people said, why don't you talk about it? It's pretty amazing.
it is. It's absolutely fascinating. So all these encounters that you've got, the alphabet, the all the different encounters that you've got, the UFOs, the Bigfoot, the spiritual encounters that people are having. Do you think that they're all connected? They're all part of the same. They're
Yeah.
coming from the same place.
So that leads us to another viewpoint. Okay, let's say we've worked out that we can go through dimensions using the vibrations, the harmonics. They become the fifth state of matter. One of the things that struck me in the beginning was, okay, we have the observers seeing the Virgin Mary in a tree or a cave in her lovely blue cape. Or we see, wandering around in the bush or something coming up in the local swamp. Or Orthon from Venus coming down, leaving messages and pissing off again. It was happening too often. I decided, right, let's forget every single sighting, the detail of every single sighting, because it's a variable. The only two constants are time and space. That's why we mapped time and space, because you couldn't map sightings as observations. When confronted by something bizarre or the unknown, where these dimensional sine waves intersect or merge or harmonize, really, because that's how they do it, and the portal opens, matter becomes in its loosest state, remember. It has been released from its electromagnetic core, and then it's suddenly reassembled. Could it be that the observer meeting this free-floating matter creates something from their own cultural loading to be the observation? For a hunter, it's a Bigfoot. If they're scientifically inclined or whatever, it's Orthon from Venus. And if they're religious, it's a Virgin Mary or a relative or a bodhisattva or a whatever.
Interesting.
All happening too often that sighting, the only constant in the sightings was they resembled cultural loadings of the observer.
Yeah, yeah.
See,
It's their perception.
it is their creation of reality so they don't go stark raving mad. Well, a lot of people do go stark raving mad because they can't build a strong enough perception to get out of it or to escape it. But secondly, we're talking about these breaks in the multiverse naturally occurring, just happily doing their thing, vibrating away. What if other cultures further than us, using a linear theory, a time linear theory, say, let's go look at Earth. Where this gap is, there's no time, there's no space. We've already mapped where it goes to and where this one opens. So we don't need huge rocket ships to take 5,000 years to get to anywhere with lots of supplies on it for the crew. We can basically jump into Dad's Wolseley, hot it up, and go straight through.
Yeah.
Immediately, which is a funny thing because a lot of weird encounter sightings with UFOs are 1 second it's seen there, next second it goes through a billboard or something. And I look at it that way. They're learner drivers. They still haven't quite worked out what to do when they come out of the other dimension,
Yeah.
and vice versa. But let's say you're a clever interdimensionalist. What's the best disguise you can have to explore a planet? Imagination of the observer. Because you can go out and become a Bigfoot. In order to say is, Clem, you're too drunk. Go back. Get out of here. Or you're a religious fanatic, or look, you're a lot of all nuts. There are no Venusians. Perfect. You can wander around the multiverse at leisure if you know where to go. And this is a roadmap.
Yeah.
Little squiggly lines that run down. Or is the entire universe created by each individual observer using the same energy? Because, as I said before, in the beginning, my sightings had to be independently witnessed by several independent witnesses at the same time. It's not just one person's delusion in most cases. Or they leave physical evidence traces, such as burnt floors, wounds, inserts. There had to be a degree of validation before I'd even bother putting them in my database, and I'm fussy.
Yeah, well,
So where do we go? What
it's
if
so interesting, man?
we could harvest that energy or harness it? Imagine you're controlling the structure of atoms and subatomic particles. What could you do for healing? To help people with major diseases and things by just restructuring. Because this is the stuff also of religious miracles. It all continues.
Wow.
And it's a lot for people to take in. A lot of your listeners will probably think I'm crazy as a loon, but I'm not.
No, not at all, man. Not on this show, you.
Well,
Awesome.
maybe not on your show.
It's absolutely awesome. George, have you had any paranormal experiences yourself?
I think I have. I have vague memories of years ago when I was about 7 or 8, wandering out of the homestead, out the French doors at the back of the house, and the sky was all brilliant red. It was like the frontispieces of old English encyclopedias were all purple and red and swirly and quite beautiful, and vague memories of I don't know whether I met a demon or an alien about 3 foot high, because I was only about 3.5 foot high. And from that day on until my mid-30s, I would not go outside in the dark again.
Wow.
I would even take cabs to go a block.
How old was you when that happened?
Something, I think I was about 8. I just finished reading Hans Holz's History of Magic. You know, you're reading a lot of stuff. But maybe I just had a dream. But it was a strong dream if it stopped me from going outside at night.
Yeah. Can you still see that can you still see what that looked like?
It was all too fuzzy. It was just a short, ugly looking thing about 3 foot high. And I was about 4'6" then. So I was tall, gangly string bean. We didn't have many fat people in my generation. But it's different now. Too much excess energy.
Wow, oh man. So was that in your house? Whatever that
Behind the
creature
house,
was.
North Wagga. Yeah. So who knows? I may have been contacted. It could have triggered everything.
Yeah.
So I'm still here. I'm still researching things no one else has.
Well, you've
I,
got an
I look at discoveries being made these days, nothing published about 20 years ago. Oh well. You know, this theory of teardrops and latitudinal events and predictive events, and you know, it's all just one multiverse, but it's all linked together.
yeah.
You know, they call it wheels within wheels within wheels. Maybe what's the name of the person? Isaiah was right. The wheels within wheels within wheels was not a craft. The wheels within wheels within wheels is a description of how everything works in the multiverse. Not that I believe in that stuff. That's weird shit.
Oh man. When we was on Andy Decode show together, Did you say that you saw a pterodactyl-like creature?
A couple of times.
Oh
I
wow!
thought I saw a pterodactyl once driving back from Sydney to Wagga at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I thought I saw a pterodactyl hanging from a street light near Gundagai, but I wasn't sure. And another time I thought I saw one too. Sometimes things just flicker in the side of your eye. Of course, some schools of magic state that's a realm of where you can see the pixies and fairies and everybody else.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure if I'm that far into believing those things, but my God, the fairy kingdoms where you go away and come back 7 years later, and it's been 2 days here, or vice versa, or 2 days there and it's 7 years here. Time dilation. Even the Bible mentions 1,000 years to God is one, and a day to God is 1,000 years to man if you go to heaven. It's time dilation again, but let's get rid of time. Let's get rid of distance. We don't need it for multiverse. We just go to station 2 3/4, platform 2 3/4, and go through there.
straight through, just run through it.
I did. It's going to be challenging because all great early exploration is dangerous. Those poor buggers trying to explore the sea recently, it's always dangerous.
Yeah, yeah,
Flying jet planes and rockets, it's always dangerous. The Vasco da Gama's fleets to the Indies were dangerous because they're new uncharted territories. But I'd really love to get I've had people try and sort out my graphs and do it mathematically, and no, it has to be done visually. Because
yeah.
once you get to trying to do 6-dimensional mathematics, you just drive yourself crazy.
Man, I would not know where to start. It's incredible, man.
Yeah, so anyway, that's a nice taster for everything. And all my
Yeah,
books are on Amazon. Please buy them from Amazon. You'll pay less tax than in your own country. I was looking at prices on my books in Australia yesterday, and I went, holy mother of God, we had a socialist government a few years ago. We got one now again, unfortunately. And it decided to produce all these X-rays, all these taxes on imported books to protect the 17 socialist members of some lesbian women's collective somewhere who still publish books of their own in Australia and belong to the same clique, the same group. And so all the taxes were raised. I got paperbacks in Australia that retail $110. But what the hell? I'm trying to get this stuff to people. Go to Amazon in the United States, buy it there.
yeah. I will
You'll
share the
avoid.
links on the show description. People will be able to find your links to get all your books. I'll add that to the show description for sure.
And I was only being generic when I was mentioning the authors in Australia, all 7 of them. They get interviewed.
Yeah. I can't believe you've not been interviewed in Australia until 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
yeah, the Village TV network.
Well,
Then it went off the air anyway.
I know we've got listeners in Australia, so this will be in Australia.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Strange things happen in the wonderful world of research in this subject.
Yeah, man, for sure, for sure. And it's incredible. Your research is amazing. Can I just ask you quickly about the pterodactyl, because I find that fascinating as well. So you saw one hanging from a lamppost.
I believe I did.
Wow. When was
But
this? Can I ask how long ago that was?
in the 70s. One moment, please. I don't want to lose you on the screen, vote. It was the same day as the Hilton bombing in Sydney, probably 1975, 76. The Hilton had been bombed in the Sydney.
Okay.
That was a phenomenal day as well. Pretty bad bombing. And they never really worked out who did it. And Sydney was a war zone at the time. So. And for those who don't know, Sydney is the capital of New South Wales in Australia.
Yeah. Wow, man. So how big
And
was this creature when you saw it?
1978
Okay.
was the bombing.
How big was the pterodactyl that you possibly saw?
4 or 5 feet long, body length,
Wow.
wings folded. It wasn't doing anything. It just standard pterodactyl size.
Yeah, that's
Or whether
awesome.
I'd had a bit stressful day of wandering around Sydney, because Sydney at the time, I remember one scene looking down George Street towards the town hall. A lot of the street was blocked. That's a main road in Sydney. And every piece of glass was on the road from the Queen Victoria building and the other side of the road for a block. And all there was a Sikorsky helicopter. No, it was a Chinook, a big Chinook, flying 30 feet above the ground, and one of the early bomb robots wandering along the road. It was a disaster. So it could have been stress from that. Who knows? I just mentioned it to my friend. I said, I thought I saw a bloody pterodactyl hanging from a tree. And he said, oh, you're probably pissed. Don't worry about it.
That's
Because I did
interesting,
have a
though.
couple of sherbets that evening.
Yeah, well, that's
It
amazing,
was
though,
a
man.
difficult day in Sydney.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Have you had any other paranormal experiences?
I can't remember. So much seems so normal to me. I forget. Oh, our old house in Picton that we had to tear down and exercise.
Oh, wow.
One day, it was an old inn from the 1830s. It had a demolition notice on it when we bought it. It had to be lived in. If anyone left, 30 days, it was to go down. It's a big old colonial thing with a big front veranda on it. And basically, it was standing up out of habit. This is in Picton, 35 miles from Sydney. And we only moved from there last January. And it was weird. One quarter of the house was missing because it burned down in the 70s when the ethnic people tried to renovate it. And then I discovered, hang on, there's a great wall through the middle of it, and the door had been bricked up. It was straight, it had been turned into 2 flats. It was originally an inn. And we had a hallway to nowhere that had all these doors that opened out onto an open space where that part of the house was gone. It's called the Great Southern Inn. And one day I decided, being me, oh, look, it was a doorway there. I'll just knock it out while Margaret's at work. So I knocked out the doorway, put in an architrave, got bricks out. She went in there. Oh, this is good. I can now get to the front, is the other side of the house instead of going out the back, along the back veranda and back in again the other side. Good. So anyway, she's busy. She tidied up that room, nice big room, lovely farmhouse table we had at the time. It looked like it would have in the 1830s, 1840s. It's very, very nice. And I don't know if she's sitting or standing in there one day, very soon after I knocked that door through. And this huge cowled figure came charging through the room from the door I had opened up, knocked everything off the dining table and headed out through a wall. That wall, we later discovered, was a door that had been sealed up as well. And the interesting
Wow.
thing is, get out. The interesting thing is, though, the woman who'd been renting that flat kept seeing things and hearing things and was getting treatment for schizophrenia. She moved out of there. She was fine.
Wow.
We found out later that we'd bought the most haunted house in this town. It was regarded as the most haunted town in the country, basically.
Wow.
So that's another one. Is
That's a
Madam
big one.
impressed by it?
No. Wow. So you opened a door to something there.
I opened an old door because ghosts travel where they used to travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why you see them going upstairs where there aren't stairs anymore and through doors that have been sealed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think
So
that's
this
like,
one wasn't.
do you think that's trapped energy or do you think that's,
I think you'd been trapped on the wrong side and been trying to get through that door from the time they sealed it.
yeah.
That's his routine. He'd go through the door and out. And then somebody
Wow.
brick the bloody door. I'd be pissed off too. But
Yeah.
technically, I'd been able to go through it, but I'm not a ghost. I'm not sure about the logistics of this. But he came through, he knocked everything off. She had that table looking beautiful, flowers, vases.
It's incredible. Did your wife see it? Did she see the?
Yeah, she saw it.
And that was
Black
that just like a shadow figure?
No, it was a black cowled figure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow.
He looked solid.
He was
She just
solid.
told me,
Wow,
oh, what,
man.
he could knock stuff off the table.
Yeah, that's incredible. And
Yes,
after the door was after the wall was knocked down, did anything else happen?
did we have any other shit happening? Oh, that's right. We had our feng shui master come in and exercise the house.
Okay.
And then eventually we demolished the house and had the ground exercised and built a copy of the house as it should have looked and did look when it was built in the 1830s.
That's cool.
Because historic building in the area,
Yeah.
but it was a total wreck. They covered it with asbestos and it was totally eaten out by white ants. So
Wow.
little things like
Yeah, that's some cool experiences, man.
yeah,
George, this has been absolutely awesome talking to you, sir. And incredible. I could listen to you talk all night about this stuff, man. It's absolutely amazing.
thank you. I
Your your
appreciate it.
your work is unbelievable. And credit to you, man. I mean, it's amazing stuff.
We'll have to talk again.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You're welcome on Let's Get Freaky anytime, man.
You can invite me anytime. I just try and fit it in with the other talks that aren't from Australia.
Yeah. George, can you tell the listeners where they can find you and your work?
All of my books are available on Amazon, and I'd prefer people go to buying directly from Amazon because I get a bigger commission. I like my $3.50. I don't want it to be $1.50 when you buy it from another. And these things take time and money to write. They're available as ebooks, so you can load them on your tablet, read them on the train. They're available as paperbacks. All of my books are available as paperbacks because I like the feel of the book and I like holding it. Most of my books are 300 pages on average. I used to do 700s and thousands, but I find people's attention spans are starting to diminish these days, so I'm reducing them. And at the moment, I'm working on a series of books on Bigfoot in the United States and Canada, each state by state, which is interesting. Some don't have many, some have more than you'd ever think. And some of my books recently have also been done as hardbacks. So if you want a hardback version, you see the red books behind me there? That's 22 volumes. As I said, 7,000 pages. I've sold one set of them in hardback already. So somebody's planning a lot of reading, and now I'm finding lots of information I want to add to it. But I thought, holy mother of God, no, let's do something else. I've written enough. I finished the Bigfoot book, and then I've got to work on my principle. Because all of these books it's a database, the Mitrovic principle we've been discussing, an overall theory of everything, of the cosmos, the multi-dimensions of going through them. Because we've found, or I found, that it's not the quasar vacuum that causes the openings. It's what we saw that was obvious as dog's balls. And here, oops, it's harmonics, because they're all harmonics. Sine wave is a harmonic. It's where they intercept the big ones down to the littlest one. I mean, I'd love it if I could find people who could analyze my data, who had the skills to discuss it with me,
Yeah.
to really get this thing going. Because this is a whole new frontier for us.
Yeah, man. It changes everything.
We could travel to through the multiverse. We can do the most amazing things.
Wow. Awesome, man. George, it's been an absolute honor, a pleasure having you on the show, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tommy, and thank you, listeners. And bye-bye.
You're welcome back anytime. I'm looking forward to having you on again.
Give me a call in a few months. I found that people like a few months gaps between me to digest. The other interviewers have said that to you as well. I got one in Canada who says, I don't interview George 2 or 3 times a year. You don't want too much of a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much information there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
My
sir.
books are also easy to read. They're not written for academics. A lot of them are written as guidebooks. The American ones on archaeology and that have the states, have the counties in there. So you can go there and look at it, or look at where it was
Awesome.
before it was wiped out. It's your job to search for data. It's your job to use my guideposts. This is where this happened. Go there, look at it. See what happens. See if there's anything wrong. See what happens again. Because if things are repetitive,
It's going to happen
you might be
again.
a lucky jackpot winner.
Yeah. George, awesome stuff, man.
Cool.
Thank you so much for sharing
Thank you,
your
Tommy.
work and coming on. And let's do this again soon, man.
Okay, give me a call. I'll be on. Unless all
Awesome.
your listeners say no, not again. But anyway,
Nah, they're going to want more. They're going to want more.
thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.